Mm, right. Well, this is part two of the grace in grieving. And I want to just put up the screensaver for a minute for those of you who came in late or are catching it later on YouTube. Yeah, there we go. Sydney coming in late here, so she'll get to see that. Uh, Even though we always end up with a recessional song somewhere around 90 minutes from now. I never actually have designed one of these talks or one of these retreats to end. And even though we'll formally end our kind of group exploration of the sort of the sacred work of grieving, uh, I think closure is bunk. It's baloney. And so I never really, even when I was teaching in high school and junior high, early on, I just decided I never wanted, I never designed a teaching to end. So hopefully, uh, the book that appears on the right, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, Rituals of Renewal, and The Sacred Work of Grief. And grief is sacred work, it's soul work. Uh, by Francis Weller, who he's one of the best guys I've ever read on grief, and I'm going to give you a little bit on Weller's what he calls the five gates of grief. We explored a couple of those gates in part one, but I want to just give a brief mention of the other three gates, and then well, we'll just go from there. So um, I'm gonna take this screensaver off for now. There we go. We're back. We're back together. Right. Um, Here's a quote from Weller's book. He said, "Coming home to grief is sacred work, a powerful practice that confirms what the indigenous soul knows and what spiritual traditions teach, namely that we are connected to one another." I think that's a fine quote to start with. What all the grief work really teaches you, and it's what he calls the indigenous soul knows, and what all spiritual traditions teach, namely that we are connected to one another. Yes, I couldn't agree more. Now, Weller talks about five gates of grief. Well, besides describing these, and some of them that you really, everybody knows. The two we talked about last week, which was, personal loss. Uh, I'm going to talk about grieving a personal loss in the second part after we look at the gates of grief. But personal loss, everybody knows that. You've lost people in your life. My nephew died, 6, 7 months ago. That was a great loss. And his father now, my brother-in-law Jim, is on uh, oxygen and it was hospice. And so the grief has already started there. And we talked about the sorrows of the world. A week ago, there was bombing going on in Iran. Iran and the United States on Israel's side were sort of blowing each other up, or at least trying to. So we know those two things, and we're in the midst always of the sorrows of the world, the bigger picture. People we don't know are being blown to bits every day in all parts of the world, Ukraine, Middle East. Yeah. So I want to talk about the quickly, just to give you, and again, the book is there for your backup. I think it's a book everybody needs to have on the shelf. It sort of takes one of the dark emotions that Miriam Greenspan talked about a couple years ago when we worked on it, uh, grief, and really goes even deeper on it than Miriam went. So you need it on yourself. You need it on your shelf. Get a used copy of it. Well, so everything we love, we will lose, and the sorrows of the world are the two obvious gates of grief. A third gate would be the places in you that have not known love. And again, I'll be sending these notes out to most of the usual suspects who show up for this kind of stuff. And if you don't normally get them, we'll just drop me an email at looseleafhollow.com, at gmail.com, looseleafhollow@gmail.com, and I'll send you out these notes so you don't have to try to not write everything down if you're interested. So another gate is the places in you that have not known love. Well, what did Weller meant by this? The neglected places in our soul that have been untouched by kindness, untouched by compassion, untouched by warmth and welcome. I call it the orphan parts of ourselves that had to be somehow shaved off, put in the deep freeze, put in the hurt locker, put out of sight for us to survive in our family of origin or to survive in this uh, confused world of sorrow. So the places in you that have not known love is a gate that a lot of times we don't, you have to get much older to start, sometimes to start really realizing that needs to be grieved. And grieving those places, bring them back. The process of grieving those parts of yourself that have been uh, orphaned, they become part of you again. Um, a fourth gate is what we expect and did not receive. What we expected and did not receive. Just by the nature of being a human being, Weller's pretty good on this. Uh, uh, he's good on gate four. What we expected and did not receive, and the expectation is built into us. The core of this grief is the longing to belong. For millions of years, we were born into small clans, probably 30 to 40. This is a perfect size for a community here. We got 30 something here people. That's bigger than that. You're into something else, a tribe maybe. But we were for millions of years born into a small community. The core of this grief is the longing to belong, the feeling of lacking something. That sort of gets you in the area. The feeling of lacking something is not a reflection of personal failure, but rather a reflection of a society that has failed to offer what we are designed to expect. Those are Weller's words. The failure to offer what we're designed to expect. And he says we're actually designed to expect 40 sets of eyes looking at us, a clan, a community. And nobody's born into that anymore, at least in this culture. You might have one set of eyes if you have a single parent. You might have two sets of eyes if you have both parents. You might have a few more sets of eyes if you have, siblings that are born before you. I had two older sisters. I had my grandmother, my mother. I had four sets of eyes, but still down from 40. And we're built to expect that. And so what we expected and did not receive. And when you have 40 sets of eyes, somebody's going to look at you with love. Your parents do the best they can, but if nobody ever looked at them with the eyes of love, it's hard for them to look at you that way. The eyes of judgment, the eyes of disappointment, So what we expected and did not receive. And he goes into each one of these in great depth. So it's a voyage to read the book. The last thing is the last gate is ancestral grief. Uh, this is the grief we carry in our bodies, in the cells, in the DNA, from sorrows experienced by our ancestors. I got in touch with that. I get in touch with that when I go back to northern Italy. Much of this grief lingers in layers of silence, unacknowledged. Sometimes there are great tears or wounds in the psychic foundation of a family that persist through generations that are present in you to be healed, which is an empowering thought, an awesome thought, too, that I'm empowered to heal tears and wounds that have happened on both sides of my ancestral family in northern Italy. Yeah. So that's something too. And you might have that feeling, especially if traumatic events that you know about happened in your family. And just a few last words on this aspect in terms of going a little further and getting the Weller book and just exploring. As you read things, as I read it the first time, and I read it a couple of times in periods of real loss and grief, that grief is our common bond. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, white, black, atheist, Christian, Buddhist. Grief is our common bond. Opening to our sorrow connects us with everyone, everywhere. It is sacred work. Uh, every day in my afternoon sitting, when I sit primarily with the sorrows of the world and always remember four groups: Palestinians, uh, Haitians, Tibetans, Ukrainians right now are four that just always come to mind. And I sit with them. I open to what they're going through, even though I don't know, even though I'm not there at the moment. Yeah. And it's sacred work. So grief helps us have a common bond. Now, I want to put up the screensaver and show you somebody that I'm grieving. I'll be grieving for a good while. I have to get my whoops. I'm gonna have to tricky sometimes. Yeah, I'm grieving this guy now. He's not the only one, but he comes to mind. I see it. I can actually see it. Yeah, there we go. You probably know Bill Moyers. Uh, he passed away at 91 this year, and I want to talk about him a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about what I'm grieving here. Uh, Bill was LBJ's press secretary in the 60s. So he was inside the government and saw the workings of it. And he just never wanted to give a press briefing where he didn't tell the absolute truth as he knew it, which meant he left politics after a little while because, that's just not the way in our system. The press secretary, they stay up there and they say what the president wants them to tell them, whether it's the truth or not. We're seeing that right now, and we've been seeing it for a long time. Well, Bill just couldn't do it. He got out. And then he spent 40 years on PBS pretty much. I think it's sort of interesting that he's just going out of this life as, our politicians are thinking of defunding PBS. That's the grief right there, grief on top of grief. But Bill changed my life. Uh, Back in '88, when he did a series with Joseph Campbell called The Power of Myth. First time I knew anything about Campbell, and really first time I spent a lot of time with Bill, and that was life changing. It's still gettable on. I think it's on Netflix. You can see The Power of Myth. I bought it still. It's digital, but it's on my thing, so I can let anybody who makes a retreat here see any part of it. But yeah, that changed. That just deepened my life incredibly, and Bill was a big part of that because he kept asking the right questions. 5, 6, 7 years later than that, he put out something that really changed my life again. It was called The Language of Life, and it was a series of. He went to the Festival of Poetry at Waterloo, New Jersey. Every 2 years, they still have one, and he taped it all and did conversations. That's where I first met Coleman Barks doing Rumi in '95. So that's 30 years, I guess. Yeah. And I just was totally, it changed my life in a lot of ways. Hearing all these great poets, Naomi Shihab Nye, uh, Gwendolyn Brooks. It's a wonderful series. Some poets that I never knew, but mostly I just got uplifted by the Barks. Yeah, that changed my life. And just just basically Bill's integrity. And when he left politics and was on the outside of politics, but he never left it in terms of being a sort of a prophet in the sense of calling politics and politicians to task, and and also the media to task. Yeah. So that's somebody I'm grieving right now, and we'll be grieving for a while. I got his picture up here, and I'm sitting with him just the way I sit with anybody who is important to me who passes away, or sometimes is in extreme distress. Don't have to die to if you just people you love, they get a diagnosis, they get hurt, you know, uh, they're having a tough time. I work with this whole community, but also with people personally, some for years. And when they go through something, I go through it. When they're grieving, I'm grieving. It's just the way it works when you get into this. So anyway, may you rest in peace and power, Bill. Yeah, I think that's a great prayer because he was a powerful figure. Okay, so our last part here, I just want to take grief and something that actually comes along with grief when you lose something big, or even you lose something you don't know what it is you lost it, but you're just feeling a kind of sorrow. Okay, uh, what sort of comes on the heels of grief is overwhelm. I can't. I wish I had $1 for every time I felt overwhelmed lately. Or also, I'm talking to people all week, and overwhelm is just sort of the atmosphere right now, and it's by design in our particular country. Imagine if you were anybody with a person of color, how much more overwhelming things are right now. So I want to talk about this, but I also want to talk about first part. I just want to sort of talk about the overwhelm effect, and then I want to talk about end with talking about viewing all this grief and overwhelm from a whole brain view. We've had a couple of classes, and there's a great book, uh, Whole Brain Living, Jill Bolte Taylor. Some of you know, it's been game changer for me. And so to look at what's going on, to experience what's going on all around us with your whole brain. So two parts. Um, and I just wrote this out because I just wanted to actually put in words. Much of the grief we carry is not personal. We've seen that in the five gates. There's all kinds of things that, well, it's not totally personal. Ancestral grief becomes personal. Everything becomes personal, but a lot of it is we're not even aware of it. Uh, so it's not personal, but shared, communal, even ancestral. It takes everything we have to deny the sorrows of the world. And people are doing it. I meet people who are not in touch with it. Deny the sorrows of the world. To walk down the street and not feel the collective sorrows of homelessness. And if you're in near any big city, you cannot avoid it. You can look away. You see people in Louisville, going, living in tents or on the street with carts. The sorrows of the world. You can't. It's hard to. If you open your eyes, open your heart. It's hard to not feel the economic insanity in our country caused by unfettered, unregulated capitalism. It's hard. And you add to that your own list of horrors. Well, mine is the ongoing live stream genocide in Gaza. I see what's happening every day, and it hurts. But I don't want these. I don't want these people to be suffering alone. Wars in Ukraine, Iran. I don't think the Iran thing is over by any means. Sudan, elsewhere. For me, the elimination of USAID. 40% of all planetary aid to the poor came from that department of our country, which I was very proud of. I saw what it did in Haiti uh, all the years I've been going. Uh, Bill Gates said the picture of the richest man killing the world's poorest children is not a pretty one. And he couldn't put it better. Gates, who's trying to spend all the money he made before he died on mosquito nets, helping people not die of malaria, helping people get glasses in places. You could do that with all that money. Yeah, we've ended one of the most potent things, and we'll have to bring it back. But man, I don't know. So I'm grieving that. Of course, the violent, brutal arrests, detentions, deportations of peaceful, hardworking immigrants. That's a majority of them. I have a friend who's a very good person. They don't believe that. They believe all the people being rounded up are violent criminals and rapists and murderers. You know. And finally, just the big picture that sort of envelops all this is kind of cruel, mindless, illegal destruction of both the administrative state, something we've been putting together for almost 250 years, and the rule of law itself in our country. So those are just five areas that I'm grieving. And I still haven't even mentioned ecocide, our relentless pillaging and wounding of the planet. Why? Well, essentially to make a buck. We only have one planet. It's terrifically resilient. That's what's going on with the weather now. It's trying to uh, it's trying to just reset, and it will reset. I mean, we had nuclear winter for 10 years probably after the asteroid hit. Well, that came back. I'm looking out the window. It's brilliant here. I see all the life here. So the Earth will come back. Not so sure about organized human life, and that's what's at stake. We're if you look at what I call the big bad billionaire bill, that's worming its way towards passage. Uh, total disinvestment, taking back the money that was given to try to do solar and wind and geothermal and wave energy, yeah, instead of oil, instead of putting out the heat. So it's overwhelming. And I want to what I have found is that, and this has really helped. Uh, what I learned about whole brain living has really helped me to work with the overwhelm, to work with the loss. So here's just a couple of facts uh, to refresh your mind from about whole brain living, or maybe to introduce you to it. Uh, we have these two lobes in our brain, the left brain and the right brain. Most people know that, but they really, to get to know what's going on in there. And one of the great insights from Jill Bolte Taylor's book, Whole Brain Living, was she says, I want you to get to know the we inside of me. And she's really details the fact that in the left brain, there's two different characters. I call them, they're characters, but I call them almost chorus of voices. And then in the right brain, there's two chorus of voices. So there's four characters that make up the we inside of me that decides what I do when I'm not aware of it. You can follow the wrong advice or limited advice. Uh, so let's just talk about overwhelm now. Overwhelm happens entirely in the left brain. So it has to do with those first two characters, your left brain cognitive and your left brain emotional. Overwhelm happens there. Well, why is that? Well, the left brain shrinks reality uh, so that because the left brain is about survival, and you shrink reality so that you can control it. Same way we squint our eyes when we really have to, look at something that's important, of something small, and so we squint our eyes. We sort of contract in a kind of defensive thing because the left brain is also motivated by fear. It's and fear is not bad when it helps you survive. Fear of something threatening your survival is helpful. But it is motivated by fear and it contracts, and so it has limited bandwidth. It has limited available space, and so that's the part that easily gets overwhelmed. Your right brain on the other hand, it expands because it's motivated by love. The right brain has no limits. It's connected to the unlimited, whatever you want to call the unlimited. I mean, we know there's a huge universe out there. Actually, this is the only universe we know. The far out to the quantum physicists who go small, and then the astrophysicists who go big. They both agree there's uh, the universe that we know is playing by different worlds in time and space and logic and right and wrong. But then what of the multiverse? As some of the astrophysics guys say, there's probably more universes even then. But this one's pretty big. Well, we know about this one, and we know how infinite it is. Well, the right brain connects to that, and so overwhelm is when you get more than you could take. The left brain often does. Okay, so uh, that's one thing. So be able to move to the right brain when you need uh, to contain what's going on. The only way I can keep doing what I'm doing in terms of even just seeing what's happening in Gaza every day is to receive it into the heart. The right brain is connected to the body and the physical heart, but to the sacred heart as well. A second thing is only the right brain can grieve. You cannot grieve in the left brain, even if you're intending to. It takes your left brain to sort of read Weller's book or to think about these things, because I'm using words, and of course, but the depth of grief can only happen in the heart because it's connected to infinite love. Without that connection, the grief is overwhelming again, and you can't do it. So the third thing I learned from whole brain living view was that you could shift from the left brain to the right brain when you're overwhelmed just by events. Could be your own events in your family, could be the events, the sorrows of the world, it could be a loss. But when you're overwhelmed, you can shift via sacred breath uh, from the left brain to the right brain. And to learn that, it's a contemplative art. Yeah, and I want to talk about that when we move in a moment from talking about grief to actually be able to do some grief. Well, here's some last words from Weller, and then we'll shift over. Weller says grief is a central means uh, by whereby our compassion is quickened and our mutual suffering acknowledged. It's a central means whereby our compassion is quickened and our mutual suffering is acknowledged. Grief is also a form of soul protest, a wholehearted response to the acts of violence and oppression, a form of soul protest. And grief is the work, I like this line the best of all, grief is the work of mature human beings. Very hard to grieve when you're young. But yeah, that's what we're about as a group here, maturing as human beings. Well, I think that's enough, Jill. We'll go on to just doing some grief work.